Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about interval training, but I wanted to talk to you about maybe changing up how you focus on your interval training, and maybe not do this all of the time, but certainly something I think you should sprinkle into your training. You know, every so often when you feel like doing it this way, but it's a way of doing intervals that I think is important, especially if you race. Now, if you guys on my latest video, if you watched that one, I talked about the importance of interval integrity and how I think that's important. But in today's video, as far as intervals, what I wanted to talk to you about is not so much, you know, what intervals you're doing or, you know, time durations of intervals, but more about, you know, when you should do your intervals. Now, if you talk to, you know, 100 cyclists, okay, and you ask them, you know, how they do their intervals, probably, I would wager a safe bet that probably 98 of them, if not more, would say that they, you know, have a very specific, you know, interval plan coming in from a coach or from an online training plan, something to that effect. And it's probably going to be an interval specific workout, whether it be a half hour in length or an hour in length, or maybe even a little bit longer. But primarily when most people do interval workouts, it's pretty much an interval workout, and you really don't focus on anything else during the workout. One thing I like doing, and if you guys are following me on Strava, you'll see I did something to this effect on yesterday's ride here on my rollers. And what I like to do, especially when it's getting closer to race season. Now it's not getting close to race season yet. It's still mid-January here in New York. In fact, I just finished plowing about 8 inches of snow out of my driveway this morning. It's still snowing here. We're getting that big storm that's been coming up across the country here this weekend. We're getting it now. I think it's tailing off. But anyways, back to intervals. As you guys know, I do racing. You know, I race, you know, quite a bit come summertime. And one thing I like to do is do my intervals from a race specific, you know, scenario. And what I mean by that is, you know, it's one thing to do, you know, maybe a set of 5-minute intervals where you're basically, you know, kind of full gas for 5 minutes, recovering, back at it again, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But it's another thing to do those intervals after you've already done a considerable amount of work, which you're going to have to do in a race. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but any race I've ever been in, you know, we're not doing, you can depending on the course layout, but I mean, we're not doing intervals, you know, 5 minutes into the race, or half the time even 10 minutes into the race. You know, you might not have to do, you know, like on yesterday's ride is the best way for me to explain it is just give you the example of yesterday's ride. On yesterday's ride, I did an hour and 40 minutes. I did an hour and I did 2 hours and 10 minutes of endurance riding on my rollers. So I pretty much got in the rollers, did 2 hours of endurance, and then I finished the ride with a 5-minute kind of all-out effort, you know. And what I did in that, by doing my interval that way, I simulated, okay, I kind of, inside here, I kind of simulated, you know, doing a race or doing a group ride where you have to ride for, you know, a couple hours at a steady pace. Again, I wasn't just lollygagging here yesterday. I was actually, you know, I think I had averaged like almost 200 watts, you know, normalized power, which, you know, for a 128-pound person is, you know, quite a bit. I mean, it's over 3 watts per kilogram. So, I mean, I rode at a normalized power of over 3 watts per kilo, and then I finished the ride with a 5-minute max effort. So what I was trying to do in that ride was, again, simulate having to, you know, stay on the pedals with, you know, with not hard tension, but with some considerable pedal tension, during the workout, getting a couple of hours into the legs, okay, and now try putting out this 5-minute max effort. Because it's one thing to put out a 5-minute max effort, 20 minutes into your ride or a half an hour into your ride, but it's another thing to have to dish out that 5-minute effort after 2 hours of riding or after 3 hours of riding. And I'll do the same thing outside once springtime rolls around. I will commonly, go out for, 5, 6, even, sometimes 7+ hour rides, and I will wait and do my, real high power outputs where I'm pretty much going full gas. I will save those for the end of the ride because, again, if you're racing, most of the races that I've ever been in, it seems like you have to have the ability to put out your best effort late in the ride. So, why wouldn't you do your intervals that way? If you're not going to race, I guess it doesn't matter. But if you're racing, or even if you're doing an event like a Gran Fondo or any kind of sportif, any kind of event where you want to perform decently, most of the time those big efforts come later on in the event or later on in the race. And if you haven't practiced, and trained to put out your best after several hours of riding, you're not going to perform at your best in the event. So, a lot of times when I'm doing my intervals, I will do them after, a couple hours of hard riding in here on the rollers, or if I'm outside, after like 5+ hours of riding. And then I will try to hammer out, maybe 2-3 sets of intervals at the end of the ride because, like I said, in any kind of big event or big race, that's what you're going to have to do, is you're going to have to be at your best at the end. And for me, the best example I can ever think of for myself personally, any race I've ever been in, is Stage 3 of the Green Mountain Stage Race. There's a race, it's a 64-mile road race, and there's 2 significant efforts. You got to go over, in that race, you climb Middlebury Gap, which is, again, depending on the pace of the group, and based off my past performances, it's about a 10-minute effort, 10 to 12-minute effort, give or take. So there's about a 10-minute effort you have to do at mile 30. So we've already ridden for well over an hour and a half, usually, and then you have to put out this significant effort. If your goal is to hang in the front group, which mine always is, you have to put out your best effort on Middlebury Gap because that's where the race explodes. And then you have to basically ride like another hour plus of endurance, after you cross Middlebury Gap. It's like there's some more efforts in there, but you get a chance to kind of recover a little bit. And then you have to do another, basically the effort of the whole day is to climb up Appalachian Gap, which is about a 15-minute effort, give or take. It's another certainly 13+ minute effort, and that's a summit finish. So you've got to be able to be performing very well near your best. If you want to do well, you have to be able to perform very well near your best at like hour 3+, okay, of a very difficult road race, and after making a significant 10-minute effort about halfway through the race. So I will oftentimes in my training here try to mimic doing that when I'm out riding. I'll ride for a couple hours, and then I'll try to time it where I'm kind of hitting a big hill that's kind of simulating that effort, and then I'll punch out that interval at hour 2, and then I'll do it again at like hour 3, hour 4. Okay, trying to simulate what I'm gonna have to do in the race. So the timing of your intervals can also be very important. Don't always think about, well, I need to do my intervals, but I want to do them, early on in the ride so I can get my best numbers. Guys, that's cool and all, but again, from a race performance standpoint, again, having those great numbers at 20 minutes at the end of the ride is great, and it can be encouraging, but is it really going to help you in the race when you need to put that out at hour 3 or hour 4 or wherever the case may be? So I guess the whole premise of this video is just, to think about this when you're training, when you're doing your intervals. Think about what goals you have for the season. What are my big races? What are my big events I'm going to be doing? Even if it's just your local group ride. How does your local group ride break out? Do you guys have a big effort to do at hour 2 of the group ride? Well, maybe you want to focus on trying to do some of those kind of, efforts in your training at hour 2 or later. So when it comes to doing intervals, don't always just focus on, doing, a brief interval workout and doing it in a manner where you're coming into those intervals your freshest and always trying to hit the absolute peak numbers. Try doing those, and again, now your numbers are going to be reduced if the later on in the ride you do them, but that's what's going to help build the strength to be as good as you possibly can be at those pivotal moments in your race. So I just wanted to make this, this video for you guys, just kind of talking to you a little bit about this concept, of doing your harder interval work late in rides when it can be important and significant in your events. If you guys have any questions, drop them down below. I'll do my best to answer. As always, guys, I really appreciate the support on the channel, and I look forward to seeing you guys right back here in my next video.